All right, guys, welcome back to Creating Genius. Today I have another very special guest on. This is my friend Ethan Aguilar, who is a leader and adventurer. He's focused on growing and expanding both spiritually and in the physical world. He's been able to blend meditation and deep self-work with being in a fraternity, which I find super fascinating. I've got so many questions about that, and I'm so excited to dive into what that has looked like in your life, and just to get your outlook on some things, because spirituality, meditation, and being in a frat seems so contradictory. Beyond that, he majored in finance, just graduated from college in December of 2023, and I know he's going to bring a really unique perspective into the business world. So, welcome. It's so good to have you. Thank you for being here.
And thank you very much for having me, man.
Yeah,
Good to see
awesome.
you.
I know it's been, well, we saw each other like a month ago, but it's still been too long. Um,
For sure.
yeah. So I'd say let's get right into it, right from the beginning. So I'm
Alrighty.
curious, did you get thrown into the world of meditation, spirituality, Dr. Joe, all of that before you were in the frat, or is that while you were in it?
It was before it was more like halfway in, halfway out. It wasn't until I got to college where it was my freshman year. We had the COVID lockdowns with the dorms. I mean, they basically had us locked up in cells like animals. And that's when I really dove into Joe's work. I knew Joe was around. I had listened to some of his stuff in high school. And the first person who got me into it was a gentleman by the name of Bob Proctor. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Not
He's
sure.
essentially kind of what Joe did, just doesn't really include any of the scientific stuff. And as you know, I have a very analytical mind. So
Mm-hmm.
when I found Joe and he was really elaborating on all the science of how this works and why it can work, I went all in and studied it and found myself going to my first event my sophomore year with one of my mentors who started bringing up Joe in the calls. And I was like, oh, wow, hey, I'm diving into this guy too. Let's go. And
That's
we
a
made it happen.
That's a crazy synchronicity. So it was like you were doing this stuff, you had kind of gotten into it, and your mentor just
Hmm.
kind of like randomly brings it up.
Yep.
Dude,
I know. I did
that's
like a
like,
triple take. I was like, what?
you were like,
And
wait,
then that was a sign. And then went on his website and found that he was doing an event in Marco Island, which is where I go to stay in Florida all the time anyways. It was just the most crazy coincidence that could have ever happened. And then after that first event, it just exponential from there.
2022, right? Your
Yes.
first one. I think
Hmm.
that's so interesting. So you were already like you were familiar with it. You were open to like the concepts of meditating and kind of the 5D world and all of this stuff. And then you go to school and so you started 2019, right?
Yes.
Basically you rushed when it was normal, and then by the time you were in the frat, then you were locked up in COVID.
No, so I joined the frat late because of COVID was going on. So
Mm,
my first semester I was locked up and I was like, okay, to hell with this. This is no fun. So I just left and all my classes were online anyways. And so I was just living at home working and doing the online classes. So I didn't come back until all the COVID restrictions were essentially gone and then decided to
gotcha.
join. Yeah. So
Oh
actually
shit.
my first event with Dr. Joe was right before I started the whole pledgeship process, which
Wow.
everyone is, that's the famous part of fraternities. And it helped me get through it. I'll just put it
Yeah?
that way.
Well,
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
you gotta elaborate on that a little more. So like what take me through this.
Okay.
You're you go to the event, you're meditate, you spend the week, you're meditating like 4 to 6 hours a day, you're like around all these super spiritual people, and then you come back and they're like, here's a handle of vodka, you have to stick it up your ass. Like how does this work?
Well, let me assure you, nothing like that happened. But I was just, I've always been pretty firm, like stubborn, but in a good way. So if something was handed to me or they told me to do something that where I was like, this just doesn't make sense to me, I'd just be like, no. I mean, they need members and they need people. So they're not going to kick you out for something stupid. And I still partook in a lot of stuff, which was fun. Um, and looking back, it actually was fun. In the moment, it sucked. but I'm
Yeah.
glad it happened. Um, but Dr. Joseph definitely helped me get through it as far as just long periods of time for anxiously waiting for the next thing to just get thrown your way. Um, that's about it. And I was chilling
So it was like, because there's a lot of unknown when you're rushing a frat.
for
Like you
sure.
said, you don't know like
Hmm.
when you're gonna get woken up out of your room at 2 a.m. So I guess, you're sitting in meditation, you're like trying to keep going into the unknown. So I guess it really is like a good preparation.
Yes, lots of unknown for sure, and that was really my first big test of embracing it. So
Mm,
nobody likes it, but I was like, I have to get used to this.
yeah,
So, and that's just how you get comfortable being uncomfortable.
yeah,
And once you can get comfortable in the unknown, you start to realize that that's how things happen. That's where new opportunities come from, new relationships, and anything of value in life has come from the other side of the unknown or being uncomfortable. So the sooner people can learn to embrace that, and it's hard, but get comfortable being there and staying there, you'll really start to see lots of changes happen in your life.
yeah, totally. Would you consider being in a frat a spiritual experience?
No, not at all. I can join the two as best I could for sure. I wanted to do it to get the full college experience, I guess. And again, I'm glad I did it. I have no regrets. It was super fun, but it was hard to interject those two lifestyles. So I could never really sit down and do a hour to 90-minute meditation and get fully in it because, boom, 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 let's go out. So there, I
Yeah,
mean, there'd be times I'm in there, I'm having a great one, and then someone screams in the hallway. And are you kidding me? And
break
so
the
I just focused
focus.
on, yeah, so I just focused on practicing being it throughout your day,
Yeah,
constantly striving to stay in brain heart coherence, constantly trying to help other people around me just feel the good energy. So just kind of like how he says, walk as it, be it, maintain it
yeah,
throughout the day. So I focused on doing that and I'd like to think I got pretty good at it because I
yeah.
couldn't really get into the deep stuff.
No, that totally makes sense. I wonder if it's almost like better practice because basically what you're presented with is if you want to commit to having this practice, you have to do it with your eyes open because you don't have the time to do it with your eyes closed, or you don't have the space, or whatever, however you want to put that. Like you're forced into this where either you practice it with your eyes open or you don't practice it.
Yeah, I'm glad it happened. But I'm excited to really dive into the more deeper stuff now that I have my own place. Um, but it was hard to conjoin those lifestyles as well because nobody else thought like me, or it was all sports betting. Where are we going out tonight? Which is fine, and I still enjoyed those conversations, but there was never any deep spiritual conversations for sure.
Were you eventually able to get any of your buddies into it, or not really?
Um, Not nearly to the extent you and I or our friends practice it, but I was definitely looked up to in there as seen as one of the more mature people. And when people would come up with like advice for whatever's going on, girlfriend dumped them, professor gave them a bad grade, I would give them our what we you and I would tell them, but in a more 3D understandable way. So I'd just say, close your eyes, become no one, no thing, nowhere, no time, no place, and just hold it for a minute, and then try two
Yeah.
minutes, and try 3 minutes, and then once you can do it for 3 minutes, breathe into your heart. I looked like I was walking around with a third eye for a lot of things. People were like, I don't know how I'm going to pass this math test. I said, just breathe into your heart.
Yeah.
They're like, huh? And I was like, focus on like how much space is in your room. And I always got positive feedback, which was the great thing. But I never took anyone into why,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if that makes
I feel
sense.
like you definitely would have if, but I'm guessing you just never got asked the like, what's good about this? Like, why am I doing this? It was just kind of like it got the result. It helped them chill out in the moment, or bring them more into balance, or whatever. And that was kind of like, oh, this is good enough. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
that's funny. I know.
Yeah.
For me, if I was coming up to you and I'm like, hey, Big brother Ethan. I just failed a math test, about to be on probation. You got any advice for me? You give me that, and I'll get into my heart, and I'm able to focus on nothing. And it ends up working out, and I would be like, dude, you got to tell me all of this. I've been in positions where it looked like I was going to be pretty fucked when I was in college the first time. And if I had something so simple, help me, I would have been like, dude, tell me everything.
Yeah. And that's why I think you and I are in the position we're in. We're curious. We
Yeah,
have to know. A lot of people just want the quick fix and move on. Um, we're curious. We want to know why. We want to know how we can keep it working for ourselves, and that's why we find ourselves in the position we're in.
totally, totally. Yeah, there's definitely something about like that curiosity. I think it's like the curiosity plus the analytical thinking. Because like you enjoy science, even though it's not what you majored in, like that's what I majored in. The
Hmm.
knowing of the whys and the mechanisms behind like what's going on, like why is this working, is that analytical mind, and like that paired with the curiosity is definitely something that I'm really grateful for, and I would assume that you feel similarly.
Oh yeah,
For
for
sure.
sure.
All right, well, I
I
have
did remember this one last story about
go for it, go for it.
about joining. It just came to me. So again, nothing bad ever happened, but I mean, it was more psychological. I'm not going to use the word torture because people actually go through torture. It's just they're just messing with you, right? And so like we were facing the wall for like an hour and a half, just silence.
Hmm.
And like we get there and I'm pretty like, and nothing happened after that. I was like, all right, like it's just they're just messing. And that was shortly after doing the retreat. So I remember standing there and I got pretty nervous in the first 5 minutes. I was like, wait a minute. Joe said you can do sitting, walking, lying down, or standing meditations. And it
Hmm.
was quiet in a dark room against the wall. And so I just did my first standing meditation. And I got really present. And I kid you not, it felt like 15 minutes. And then the lights came on. And they're like, all right, go home.
Wow,
And an hour and a half had passed.
that's awesome. Were you
Yeah.
just like in nothing? Did you just like enter that void?
Yeah. I had to because otherwise I was nervous.
Yeah.
So it like forced me into it. And yeah, that was pretty incredible.
That's such a cool experience. Right after going to the retreat, I know for me personally, going to my first one, and then people, other like friends that I know, getting back into your regular life, it's like you have all these things that try to like almost pull you back to the old. There are things that can get you out of your practice if you're not aware of them. And I feel like it was such a gift for you to get put in these situations where you can get past that nervousness, if you can get past that anxiety, you can really tune in and use the stuff that you just learned. And so it's like, here's this opportunity, practice it.
Yeah, it was like getting handed a final exam right after Joe's retreat, but
Yeah.
performance based.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that I passed. Um, but yeah, and as far as like being in the classroom, having this knowledge that we have was just insane. I probably saw more results actually being in the classroom. So, for example, you have a bad professor, you can't understand them, or their grades super hard, or their assignments, instructions are super hard. Everyone's just frustrated. Like you feel a tension in the classroom. Like
Hmm.
everyone's just hates the professor's not trying, and there's just butting heads. Um, so I would just get into my heart, get into the space, find that brain heart coherence, and then I would just, it's not an emotion, but I'd feel more flow, um, movement, ease, and I would just feel that all class while being present in the class. Definitely lowered my cortisol levels for sure, more than all my
Hmm.
peers. But and then we'd get an announcement the next day or the next class, and I laughed out loud multiple times because of this. Hey guys, I'm gonna remove the lowest exam score at the end of the semester.
Wow.
Or hey, I decided to give you guys bonus points. Or I mean, I didn't laugh at these ones. It's like, hey, I have a family illness. I'm gonna be gone all next week. It's just
Yeah.
something in our favor would happen.
Dude,
Um, and I'd like to
that's,
believe that I helped cause that in the field.
oh yeah, I'm sure. Like just kind of bringing that into, and I would love, if I know this isn't possible, it would be so cool to interview the people that were in that class and be like, how did their experience change as they spent more time around you and you're working on being in coherence? Because we know, the heart, the field of the heart is 4 feet around you. So if you've got,
Mhm.
you know, in a classroom jammed like sardines into these chairs, you've got at least 2 people on each side within 4 feet of you. So you're impacting their fields, and you change the energy in their fields. Their energy that is now changed is going to change the people that are in their fields, and it just keeps going. And I would wonder, like, I mean, I know there's research on the people that don't attend events and still getting benefits, like in the Dr. Joe events. And I would assume that it's the same stuff. And I think it's such a really good way or reminder that even one individual doing the work has an impact on the people around them, even if they don't know.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. No, I don't think anybody would know. And I never told anyone. Like I said, I wasn't gonna go around saying, "Hey guys, I'm manipulating the field so that we can all get A's." Um, I would just, I mean, like we'd be sitting there, and then the professor would come in. I'm gonna just drop the lowest exam score. We're not off to a good start, and I'd like chuckle, and then someone was like, "What?" And I was like, "It's just funny. Like
Yeah,
it's too easy. It's too easy."
yeah, that's so awesome.
And
Oh,
I attribute a lot of that to being able to get out of there early too.
yeah,
Um, I never had any schedule hiccups. I'd feel the flow, the ease moving forward when we were scheduling classes, and it would always just, I'd get into all of them. A lot of people, you'd only get into like 3 or 4, and then you'd have to scramble to try and race and to get into the next ones that you could. It was always just flawless on my end. So definitely a big part of how I was able to get out of there early.
yeah. That makes total sense. It's just
Mhm.
like, yeah, you're spending so much time just in the field, and I think one of the really cool things about you is that, because I think the background in the frat and the way that you had to develop your practice, like you're really good at being in the 3D and the 5D at the exact same time. Where I find that for me, I'm kind of either or. When I get into my
Okay.
meditation, I can get there. I'm learning how to do it better, better at kind of towing the line between both. And I just think like it's really cool that you're able to do all this without sitting down and taking the time and having the time to meditate, and you're still making all this shit happen. And I think it's a testament to like practicing with your eyes open, and why that's so important to keep on doing that, where it's like, you have that 1 hour of good meditation in the morning, but the rest of your day you're doing whatever. You're not tuning in, you're not feeling
Hmm.
your heart, you're not connected to the field, and so you're weighing the 1 hour
Yeah,
of practice versus the rest of your day being the exact same person. It's like, no wonder there's no change happening. So,
for sure. I kind of look at it as if they cancel each other out. I mean, that's just how I look at it. I don't know if it actually does, but I mean, if you have a really good morning meditation and then the rest of the day is just off, you're angry, you're incoherent, you're all over the place. I mean, you're putting out two conflicting frequencies that aren't going to change the field. So I think while I wasn't able to have that really good in depth within meditation, I was able to maintain those higher states of frequency all day. I was sending out a consistent message.
yeah, definitely. That's exactly what it sounds like. Have you
Hmm.
ever, do you know, like, you know what heart math is, right?
Yes, I have
You have,
their
you have
I have a
one?
box right. Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, hell
I'll
yeah.
prove it. I'll prove it to you. Oh no, I kept the box because advertise. I'm coherence in
They,
the office. But,
yeah. Their logo and stuff is very cool. Like, it's such a satisfying thing. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, I'm guessing you have the monitor, right?
Yeah, I don't wear it nearly as much as I used to, but I did have it with me in school, and I'd be doing homework with it, and
Oh, nice.
just so I
So,
could get really good at knowing what that felt like.
oh, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, if you wore it while you were doing just kind of like regular stuff. Um,
Yeah, just by myself though. I didn't want to be walking around campus with this thing hanging off
yeah,
my ear.
yeah, that's fair. Um, so did you notice when, like, could you attribute better study sessions to when you were in greater coherence?
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. It's kind of how like elite athletes will say they're in the zone. There's all this pressure and it forces them to just lock in and be coherent 100% with whatever they're doing. Same thing with studying. You know, it's far from being an elite athlete, but I don't know, I was locked in and coherent. And there were definitely days when I'd be stressing about an exam. By no means was it perfect. And I'd try to do it, and I was just too nervous, too much of a grade on the line. I couldn't get into it. So, but for sure, if you're coherent and you're locked in, your brain waves are all synced up together. You're gonna actually. I noticed the retention was a lot more too. I'd only have to study a couple times instead of consistently.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's like you become more open to information.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who maybe are new to meditation and are new to this stuff, don't know what heart math is, can you, this is a big ask. Can you do your best to describe what that feeling of coherence is like, um, for someone who new or is like trying to get it but doesn't really know? I know it's hard to put into words, but if you have them, I feel like that would be appreciated.
Let's say you won the lottery on it some random night. All right, all
Okay.
this money has just appeared. All your worries have gone away. You have incredible relationships with people, multitude of friendships. Everything in life's just good. You go to bed. You have a great 8 hours. You wake up and you have no worries. You're just happy to be sitting there in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking clearly because your brainwaves are still coming out from delta to theta. Um, that's probably, and you're just feeling an immense gratitude for life.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, wow, that blue wall is a beautiful blue wall.
Mm-hmm.
This pillow is super comfortable. I love all my friends, all my opportunities. Yeah, you're just a happy camper.
So it's almost like gratitude for no reason.
Gratitude for no reason. I just used the water as an example to like imagine how you'd feel if you're just like
Yeah, yeah.
um no worries, no anxiety, no depression, uh, which we could get into that too. I think this could help those rising numbers. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just sitting there and enjoying life without anything in 3D making you
Yeah.
enjoy it. You are making you enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a completely like internal process. And that's one of my favorite things about like meditating, especially when I feel like shit and don't want to do it, is when I do it and I bring up those feelings, I'm like I'm wearing a blindfold and my eyes are fucking closed. And I go from feeling like shit to feeling happy. There's no one
Yeah.
did that for me. Like I was the one who did
No.
that. And I think it's like it just gives an added level of appreciation for what I can do as a human because I'm like I don't need anything in my external environment to make me feel good.
Yeah.
I
And
can go
then and now you
internal
can
all
take
the
that
time.
and then now you can take that frequency, that energy and spread it throughout your day and help somebody else who needs it or
Exactly.
isn't aware of how to do it.
Exactly. I mean that's that's part of the hope with this podcast and having people like you on and being able to explain this stuff is because it's just doing the work internally and being able to do it without needing external validation. And that's kind of when that magic happens, where it's like release the expectations of what I think happiness is supposed to look like and just focus on feeling the happiness. And it's like when I feel the happiness, the external world is then going to organize itself to reflect that.
One of my biggest ahas with this work was when Joe talked about how people will love to practice feeling angry or judgmental or in like your body for some reason craves those emotions that also destroy itself.
Yeah.
So you can get good at feeling hate. You can get good at feeling jealous. You can get good at feeling envious. Um, but why would we not practice feeling joy, love, wholeness, abundance? because it's definitely a lot harder to make yourself release the oxytocin and feel an abundance of love. I can
Mm-hmm.
get angry like this. It's going to take me a 15 to 20-minute meditation to get that same level of anger, but on the other end of the spectrum,
Yeah,
and wholeness and authenticity, all those higher frequencies. Um, so why not try and practice these more elevated emotions so that when things happen in the 3D world that aren't necessarily in your favor, you might feel a little bit for a second, but then you have that awareness to flip it around and I'm just going to feel love or joy right now
totally.
because there's no point in being angry.
Yeah,
So it is. I don't know where that must be an evolution thing, to fear of the unknown or prepare for the worst, and that's why we're so good at feeling those emotions. But
yeah,
it's life changing. The faster you can bring up the elevated emotions, the better.
totally. I was just about to ask you, do you think there's a reason why it's so much easier to feel the sort of negative emotions? I guess the thing that I was thinking of is having the human experience is something that I think about a lot. I wonder if it's easier for us to feel those negative emotions and to wire them and everything because it's supposed to take work to overcome it, right? Like if it was so easy to feel the positive stuff, there would be no benefit in learning how to do it because it would be easy and it wouldn't be something that we appreciate and it wouldn't force us to grow as humans. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So you're saying that because it takes a lot of effort and energy, that's what makes us appreciate those higher emotions.
I think it's part of it. I don't know for sure. It's sort
Um,
of a wonder.
yeah, I don't know if it's that. I mean, things that do take time and you have to work harder for, I think, is what gives them value.
Yeah.
But I really think it's just easier to feel the negative ones because that's how we've been biologically wired for survival, evolution. When you're about to do something, you're only picturing the worst outcome. Like
Yeah.
that, it's probably not going to happen. I'm not going to go drive to work and get in a car accident and die tomorrow.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, that's the only thing that, like, they get in the car, bam, that's what they're focused on, and that is the
Hmm.
farthest end of the spectrum as far as bad outcome, good outcome.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's just a survival thing, because unfortunately, not really anymore. We have a developed society, but sticks and stones era, you had to be eerie and want to take things and hurt people.
Yeah.
So I think it's just an evolutionary thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. At that time, there wasn't like the room for compassion because it's
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm running away from a tiger, it doesn't matter if I'm nice to the guy next to me. I just need to get away from the tiger. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I don't, I die. It doesn't matter. So I
Yeah.
think, and honestly, to kind of contradict my initial point, in terms of biological hardwiring, it makes sense. We have the highest density of cortisol receptors are in the hippocampus of our brain. And that's where we do learning. That's where we have memory. That's where all of the basically higher level processing in the brain happens. And so when you activate cortisol, it binds to the receptors in the hippocampus and basically tells it to turn off because we don't need that higher level of processing. We're literally like physiologically we're programmed to be sensitive to the environment, to be looking externally for threats. And so that's why it takes more work to get over that and to bring up the positive emotions because you're sort of fighting against biology.
Yeah. I would agree with that 1,000%.
Circling back, when we were talking about your frat experience, I had a question that kind of came up, and that is, was there anything about the frat lifestyle that sort of weirdly aligned with your spiritual practice? Something unexpected that you found was really sort of fulfilling and yeah, aligned with your practice that you were not expecting it to be?
Definitely wasn't a lot. Maybe I would say the only thing is like that feeling you get when, I mean, you're living with 80 of your best friends.
Hmm.
So like you come back from break and it's what's all, you're just like super happy, super grateful to see everybody. Um, and that I would ride that high into whatever I was doing next.
Yeah.
It did all the heavy lifting for me to get to that point.
Yeah. So it
But
was almost like
just like
you,
seeing your boys, it's kind of like going to the Joe retreats. It's a community. Everyone's got the same thing going on. We're doing the same stuff. A lot of people know each other. Other than that, that's a really good question. I don't think much intertwined.
the reason why that came to me is I just love the aspect of holding two things that are contradictory at the same time. It's like most people would think, how could you have a spiritual practice and be in a frat and be like drinking every weekend and partying and doing all the stuff that goes on in a frat lifestyle and also have this? And just thinking about like weird synchronicities where if there was anything that did overlap. But honestly, it makes it even more impressive that you were able to kind of keep that practice going. It definitely shows in you being able to hold these concepts that are in opposition to each other and allow them both to be a part of your life is really cool.
Yeah, a big part of my mindset is kind of a why not both mentality. You ever have a friend who comes up with these insane would you rather questions?
Oh, yeah.
And then they're like mind boggling. So they're, like if I was asked, would you rather a Lamborghini or a GT3 RS? Why not both?
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to get both. And I've kind of had that mentality going through all my younger years. I saw it especially in high school. You can remember back to those days. You have like your different cliques of people. You have like your athletes, your very studious people, gamers, car people, nerds, stoners, everything. And like you had to stay within your boundaries. Crossing your border to go talk to them, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
I find that I was able to just be not even friends or acquaintances with everybody. You could get along, and we have such like polarity in society nowadays. It's gold or Bitcoin. You can't have both. One's better than the other.
Yeah.
You're not concerned, or Democrat or Republican. You can't have both. Have to be one or the other. So we need to live more with just a inclusive. Why not both society? There's benefits and non-benefits to everything. So
yeah.
I was able to maintain the spiritual life and do the fraternity. They had nothing in common, but like why not both? They're both fun. They both helped me. So I guess that's just how I looked at it.
You living that it's evidence for people to look at that you can have both. And I think that's really cool because like you said, our society right now it's very polarized. It's very like one or the other. And, most of life happens in that gray area. It's not really ever actually black or white. It's all this kind of like in between area where real life happens. You being able to hold both of the extremes at the same time is because, you're able to live in that middle ground, which is super cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Continuing on that line of thought, for you who is someone who's lived in an environment that's sort of pushing against your spiritual practice, is there some advice that you would give to people who find themselves in similar positions where they feel like their external environment is pushing against what they feel like they need to be doing for themselves? Or if they have a spiritual practice but their friends don't, or they're in a frat and they're trying to meditate and do all this stuff. Do you have any advice for people in those types of situations?
Well, I would say if the environment's truly trying to strip it from you, get out. You don't belong there, and they're not in your best interest. The whole college life and the fraternity thing, it wasn't trying to strip it from me. It was just distractions.
Yeah.
So be able to navigate the distractions, be aware of when they're coming. You gotta be able to see it before it happens. And if you're in an environment where it's truly just trying to strip it from you, do whatever you can to get out, because that's not going to do any good for you. And your soul, your mind are real, and your words. Those are the only 2 to 3 things that you'll ever own ever. So think about it. You buy a house, if you piss the government off enough, a judge is going to stamp a piece of paper. It's not your house no more.
Yeah.
So people think they own stuff. You will never own anything in your life fully, except for your words and your mind and soul. Some people categorize them together. So
Yeah.
just own it. Don't let the distractions work. And if the environment is, if you're under some corrupt government where they're going to kill you for having spiritual practices, then get out.
I don't know if you have an answer to this, but do you feel like you could give a distinction of in your life a time where you felt like, okay, this is a distraction versus this is my environment trying to actively kind of undermine me? I don't know if you have something, or if there's a feeling, or like how could someone be able to distinguish between the two of those things?
Okay, yes, I actually have a really good story for this. So my first job was at a pizza place. And this was right when I was getting into all this. And so I was practicing maintaining it throughout, and understaffed, super busy. A group of 50 came in unannounced, and we called everybody and nobody wanted to come in, of course. And everyone's just on edge. And I'm just walking around because why would you be angry?
Yeah.
We're getting paid. We're getting paid anyway. And then the pizza oven stopped working. It's a pizza place. That's a big problem. And the manager was just losing it. I was like, well, at least the oven didn't blow up. And she was like, huh? At least it didn't blow up. Just go home. Yeah, sent me home for trying to uplift everybody and be positive. And so I sent my 2 weeks in that next day.
Yeah.
So that's an example of an environment that is just trying to strip that mentality out of you, which is why, like I said earlier, get out.
Yeah.
And then as far as the distractions, I mean, the entire time I was in college.
Yeah.
And by no means, like I said, it was like perfect. I definitely gave in and it was distracted, but it's like Dr. Joe says, whenever you fail, you bring it back.
Yeah.
And that's a victory. You do that enough times, it's a victory. But I also wanted to be present and get that experience. So I gave myself a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, totally.
Go out, have fun, make new friends, all that. But I was definitely like, ooh, that's definitely a distraction, and I'm not going to indulge, or did, and you bring it right back.
Distraction is just kind of like something on the sort of the periphery that is like, it's a little bit of temptation here or there. That pizza one is a really good example because it's like you're trying to uplift and help, and they're like, no, get the fuck out of here. We don't like your attitude. And you're just like, I'm just trying to help with morale here. I think that's a really, really valuable example. So thank you for that. I know that's kind of a tough question. So it's funny.
Yeah, I hope that helped.
No, it definitely did. And it's funny, like you texted me before, you were like, no curveballs. And I'm like, I can't make any promises because that's just how my mind works. I'm always coming up with questions and stuff like that. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about integration. And what I mean by that is taking the breakthroughs that you have, whether they're in meditation, whether they're in your daily life. It could be completely 3D world based. You just came up with an answer to a problem that you've been having in your life. It could be business, it could be whatever. And taking that new information and basically integrating it into your body, into your nervous system, and allowing yourself to really take that lesson and use it going forward. And not just, it's like, oh, you have the light bulb moment and then you're not able to do anything with it. So I look at integration as the process of taking that light bulb moment and acting on it. Are there things you do personally after you have a breakthrough, or you've had really crazy experience in a meditation and you've gotten some new download or information? What do you use to help take that forward and not just have it be, oh, that was a great meditation and that was all it was?
Pen and paper. Can never go wrong with that.
I love it.
I don't journal every day, but I definitely, if something really good happens or you have a breakthrough, like you said, just write it down after I come back from it all, and I review it, not often, but often enough. Like if I ever get stuck, I can go back and look at all these hours of work that I put in and see what I got from it. And then you also want to try to you don't want to forget those, but then you don't want to have the same problem happen to something you already got the answer to and you just forgot because you didn't reflect on it or write it down. Yeah. Then you're just wasting time.
Yeah.
So yeah, pen and paper, it's your best friend.
Yeah.
If you put it in your notes on your phone, I love people use that. When have you ever opened your notes app again and looked at what you've written? it's,
It's
at
fair.
least for me, it's not often. So, uh, yeah, always just keep that journal close by. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. What do you do?
that's my go-to also. I
Okay.
write, I get pen and paper. You know, I don't know if you watched the episode I talked about integration. I think it was like two of them ago. But I was like, journaling is going to be your best friend. So for people who may think that I told him about this, I did not. I
No.
promise. Um, it's my absolute favorite thing to do to help me learn the lessons that if I feel like I'm struggling with something, if I feel like I just had this crazy meditation, this breakthrough, and I don't know what to do with it, it just it gets put in the journal.
Mm,
And just the act of taking it from my mind and putting it onto the paper is amazing. And it
yeah.
really helps me take that forward.
Yeah. And I mean, there's numerous studies that show there's much more retention when you write something out rather than notes or type.
Yeah.
Um, you could probably, the neuroscience better than I do. There's got to be something though, where just the act of writing it, you'll remember it so much better, and it's easy
Yeah.
to go back to.
You know, I think it has something to do with your fifth center because you know how your fifth center includes your arms and your shoulders, so it's basically throat all the way down into your arms. Authenticity comes from the fifth center, and like one of the most authentic ways of expression for humans going back centuries has been writing. Like how the only reason why we even know what the fuck happened in history is because people wrote it down using their arms. Like so there's this really powerful aspect of truth that comes from writing. Because when you're typing, you're just using your fingers. It doesn't activate that entire neural circuitry going from your brain all the way down into your arms in the same way. And so I think spiritually, the center of truth. So when you write it down, you're using that fifth center, and it's just a different sort of more holistic neural connection when when you write down stuff with your hands. I think on multiple levels there's really good reasons why it's so powerful and why it's one of my favorite things to do.
I never even thought of that. How you're right, it goes down to your arms, and it's like any sort of communication, speaking or writing.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately on how like obviously, we've got the energy centers and there's the 1 through 8 and why they're energetically important. And then I've also been thinking about like how does this stuff show up in the world? Like how do we express them with other people, with relating to nature, with relating to even ourselves and like in our bodies. But there's just been some really valuable insight that's been coming through third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, especially the way we express them and the way we live our lives really dictates how they're expressed. It's just been something that keeps coming up for me. And so I'm kind of just leaning into it, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's like how you can relate very many external things to a certain spot, and it's like, I can see. It's hard to put into words, but I get what you mean.
Going back to that integration thing, what about exercise? Do you play sports a little bit?
I retired after my high school football career.
Do you feel like being physically active is something that helps you stay present at all, helps you kind of integrate some of the spiritual stuff, or does it feel kind of more of its own thing?
Well, I don't know how spiritual I make it. Probably not at all. But your greatest wealth is your health.
Yeah.
So that's something I do take very seriously. It'd be tough to meditate if you had a very unhealthy, uncomfortable body. So your health is the foundation of pretty much anything you do or want to do. So I take it very seriously. I still work out a ton, stay active. Maybe you could do running meditation. I don't,
That
I'm
sounds
not sure. I've never
really
tried,
that
but
sounds really difficult.
because if I could get out of the pain from running and just be in that nothing, then that would be perfect. But um, yeah, I don't really integrate the spiritual with the physical. But like I said, the body is your vessel for doing things. So you need a healthy body to really do anything.
I asked that kind of more out of curiosity than anything. I've been trying to make my workouts a little more spiritually based. So I'm always just kind of curious if others are doing the same and what that looks like for them.
There is one thing. It's that pulling the mind out of the body.
The breath.
because that shit in and of itself is a workout.
Oh my
I am
God.
sweating. I'm sweating after it.
Yeah.
And you're working almost every single muscle group minus your lower legs. So that's it, I guess.
So on that, you told me a story once about you using the breath to help sober you up when you were really drunk. I I feel like it would do a disservice to anyone listening to this podcast for you not to give your experience with that.
Yeah, we just finished up a party. I probably sound like a party animal. Those days I promise are over. I can't handle it anymore. But had my fun and moved on. But yeah, so we just finished up a party, and it was not about a drive home. Obviously, very against that. However, I lived about 3 miles away from the fraternity houses before I lived in, and I rode around on like an electric. They're called one wheels, so they have the one big wheel in the middle. And I was just way too hammered to ride that thing home, especially I was in Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. It's a scary place. They had meth heads walking around everywhere at night. So who knows what would happen? Couldn't go home, didn't have a place there. So went into my buddy's room, who left with a friend, and did the breath. Had an incredible experience. And it only took a few attempts too. And just kind of sat there, like how Joe says, just let it feel. And then came out of it. I didn't even realize until I walked back out in the hallway and everything wasn't, going like that. And I was like, wait a minute. So I still
That's
waited a little
wild.
bit because you can still catch a DUI riding those things because it's
Yeah.
motorized, which is dumb. But so I still waited a little bit, but I went in there spinning, and 3 minutes later came out not spinning. So
That's
I can't explain it.
that's unbelievable.
And
I love that.
well, the reason I was going to do it was because I was going to just do a meditation and fall asleep,
Yeah.
and like that was my only option, or do a meditation to try and get sober in an hour. And then when you're drunk, you can't really focus on anything. So I just did the breath, had a great experience, and I was like, back to the hallway and talk to people. And then I was like, oh, it's normal again.
Yeah.
So you with all the knowledge you have, do you have any ideas of what
Oh my
happened there?
God. I,
Because that it was not my intention to do it to sober up. It just happened.
I would wonder, this is, don't take my word on this for at all.
Sure.
But the only thing that's coming to mind is, actually there are two things that are coming to mind. One is kind of like a more spiritual side, and one is more like biochemical, physical. So I'll start with the
Okay.
spiritual one. So I would say our first center is the center of pleasure, it's the center of passion, it's the center of all of that kind of like indulgence. And when you're drunk, like drinking, I would say is an indulgence.
Yeah.
And so you're definitely, when you're consuming that, I would say you're stimulating your first center. And so it's like the more you drink, the more, energy is down there. And I would say that that's part of the reason why people get horny when they're drunk. You doing the breath, you're basically pulling all of that energy. And I guess to kind of go take that point even further, like when you drink, you get cloudy. And when there's like an overstimulation of one, I feel like it clouds your judgment and clouds your mind, and things seem kind of like weird and funky, energetically. And so you're taking this excess of energy in one and pulling it all the way up to your brain. And I would wonder if you basically just like realign it, because it's like one in that indulgence, and drinking is pulling energy away from everything else. And that's the spiritual reason why you get drunk, is that excess in one, re-regulating that when you pull it. And then the other thing, the scientific one, is I would wonder, because the whole part of the breath is you're compressing the crystals in your pineal gland and you're making that thing more active. And I would wonder if some of the metabolites that you make, whether it's DMT or beta carboline or even melatonin, when you activate the pineal gland, I would wonder if those would have a sobering effect, or they neutralize some of the alcohol in your brain or in your system. So again, that's very much off the cuff. There
Yeah.
scientific
Well, either
evidence,
or something happens, so something worked.
but just kind of using my brain to sort through that. That's what I could that's all I could come up with.
But no, hey, there's an example of integrating the two. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
the frat, the brat.
exactly. That is that is one of my favorite stories. It's just like what even compelled you to do that in the moment? Not and again, you didn't have the thought, but just being like, yeah, I'm just hammered. I'm gonna go meditate now. Like
I guess I had nothing.
classic
I would just
classic frat guy thoughts.
um yeah, no, and by all means I'm not recommending after a night out you can do the breath and drive home. Do not
Yeah.
do that.
No,
It is
yeah.
still in your system and you will still blow the same. But I don't know, it just made my brain coherent. Joe says doing the breath it puts you into heart and brain coherence, so picks me up.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. I just think it's such a cool example of you kind of integrating those two lifestyles and just like making it work and being open to whatever the unknown has for you. And in that case, it was sobering you up a little bit. So you graduated in December. Are you grateful, or have you noticed any benefits from graduating early as opposed to like having one more semester and otherwise you'd be graduating in like a couple weeks?
I'm extremely grateful for the fact that I was able to do it. I've never been a school person, so I wanted to get in, get out. Um, but let's see. So I got to save the extra money from doing it, and I don't live too far from the campus, anyways. So the idea was leave early, and now I'm not tied down to the one physical location. But if I still really wanted to have fun, I could go back. I'm
Yeah.
actually going back tonight.
Nice.
Um, just it's like the last full week that everyone will be there.
Hmm.
Um, so I that was my plan always, and I think if I were still there, I mean I'd still be having all my fun and stuff, but definitely unlocking that being tied down to one physical location. Just it's been amazing.
Yeah.
Feeling freedom all the time, and uh, I mean that's really it. So as soon as I found out I was going to be able to, I went for it and never looked back.
Totally. Yeah. And like you mentioned kind of at the beginning, it's giving you more time to kind of dive into the spiritual side of things. I like to actually sit down and do the meditations without having someone bang on your door. Do you like them
That's
better?
so much better. Like yes, it's totally different. You can actually get through it.
Yeah.
Um, let's. I mean, like, there's no like. I never wanted to get walked in on meditating or doing the breath. It looks funny,
Yeah.
especially in that environment.
It's almost like
Um,
it's almost like having someone walk in when you're jerking off, except totally different. But it's like I feel like it's like the way we're talking about it. It's like the same shit. Where it's like I don't want anybody. Like I hope no one walks in. I hope no one bangs on my door while in the
yeah.
middle of this.
Well, especially because you're not mentally in this realm anymore.
Right.
You're able to put yourself somewhere else. So someone would walk in, and it's like dozing off in class. Is how I explain it to people. The professor's like, "Oh," and you're
Yeah.
just like not there. So someone would
Right.
walk in, and I'd either I do like the laying down ones last. I'd be laying there unresponsive or convulsing from the breath, and they'd think I'm having a seizure.
Yeah.
Um, so it's so nice having my own place, and you don't have any of those free privacy measures. You just whenever I feel led, it just happens.
Yeah. And I think there's something about like the spontaneity of like when you get like woken up out of one, because I know like when you're deep in it, it can take for me like half an hour to sort of like get my bearings again. I don't
Mhm.
know if you have the same experience, and I bet like sometimes when you were like deep in it and someone knocked you out, you're really out of it for a little while.
I was able to come back to it pretty quickly
Hmm.
when I was woken up, just because more I'm like I would just get angry. I know that's like you're having a really good experience, and then someone does some dumb shit in the hallway, or they break your door down, and you like, I'd come back and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm coming. And then you're kind of in that theta to
Yeah.
low level beta, and so it's like how I would describe it to people when 15 minutes after you've woken up, you're conscious, you're moving around, but you're still like,
Yeah,
um.
yeah, yeah.
So I'd be able to sober out of it, address the problem that has arisen or the situation, and then I'd be groggy for like half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the things that's like, in trying to incorporate it into my day, that if I do it in the morning, I'm fine because it's just like waking up anyways. But
Yep.
if I don't do it first thing in the morning and I do it in the middle of the day, I'm like sometimes I'll get back from them and I'm like, where am I? Like, what the fuck just happened? I have to like reorient myself to my environment and
Yeah. Like
everything that's going on.
you're home if you come out of it and you're like in your bedroom. Like you're home, but you're like still transitioning worlds almost, or states of consciousness.
Yeah.
So you're still having to recalibrate everything, and you're right. It feels like weird.
I
You know where you are, but you don't know where you are.
yeah. I it's funny, like today I did one like 3 hours ago that I was telling you about before we started. When I opened my eyes at the end, I I did it downstairs in my kitchen, and I woke up, took my blindfold off, saw I was in my kitchen, and I was like, I didn't start in the kitchen. I was so deep in it that I totally forgot where I was. And I was like, what am I doing here? It was almost like alarming. I was like, did I sleepwalk? What just happened?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Like you just forget, and like sometimes I'll actually, this chair was my meditation chair. And back in school, just it's super comfortable,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's rolly. So I do it this way, and then over the hour and a half, I'm like now facing this way. But then you take it off, and you're expecting to be able to see where you are, or where you
Yeah.
remember where you were, and I'm like looking at the wall now instead of like my bed or whatever, and I'm like, what? Like you're so thrown off.
It is very weird. Like coming back to your body after, like, I remember, and as I've gotten, like, one of the ways I know that I've gotten better at it is that it's weirder when I do come back to my body. Because, like, I'm actually, like, leaving it. Whereas in the beginning, I would come back, be like 2 minutes, and I'd get up and I'd be like, yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, you
And,
you, you know it was good when you're bamboozled.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
It's more work to get
definitely.
back.
Definitely. Um,
It's a lot of work to leave, and then who knows what happens when you leave. But the more that
exactly.
happens, the harder it is to come back.
Yeah,
So,
that is totally, totally true. So, beyond meditating, and well, you talked a little bit about writing stuff down. Have there been other things that have like enriched your spiritual practice?
uh, I guess my default is Christianity. So,
Hmm.
relationship with Christ, that's where I align. Um, but like I said before, you can have both. And a lot
Yeah.
of people, it's either this or this, merge them together a lot. And Ed Milet, who's a big time internet speaker, who has had Joe on his show multiple times, I think 4 times.
Oh wow.
He talks about that a lot. So he's really good at being able to advertise his faith in Christ and have Joe on the podcast and merge them super well. Um, so I would just say that. As far as other spiritual practice, that's really it. Just
Hmm.
faith in Christ and meditations and
Fair
awareness of
enough.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What about you?
I was gonna say you don't strike me as a tarot card type of guy.
A what?
Like tarot cards or like astrology. You're like
Oh, no, yeah, no.
I was gonna say you don't strike me as that. For
Yeah,
me, It's been recently I've actually become more open to astrology. Our friend Matt is super into astrology, and when I was out in California hanging out with him, he was educating me about that, and 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 I had some cool experiences. I had been like basically just like meditation, journaling, that stuff. And just recently, like I've had my eyes open to some of the other modalities around it. And I mean, this is gonna sound weird, but just like being authentic, as stupid as that sounds, is like one of the easiest ways for me to kind of align. Because I think for me, in past, I've had patterns of like wanting to people please and do things to placate those around me, and just realizing that I can do that, but that might be at the expense of my own soul. It's just setting boundaries and just being like, if this doesn't align with me, just let it go. Um,
Yeah. Freedom does not come from saying yes. It comes from the ability to say no.
yeah, no, I like that one. And I was gonna say, you had to do some boundary setting while you were in the frat, and while you were trying to balance these things, make them both work. Like part of you being able to the why not both is knowing when to say no to certain things.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of no's said. I was probably the biggest no sayer. I mean, hey, let's go to this house party. No. Let's go out tonight. No. Um, Nothing against that. It's just I just wasn't feeling it. And like I said, freedom comes from the ability to say no. But being able to live with both, it was more of if I go out, if I have fun this weekend, then I have to be super consistent with meditate, or I have to be very consistent with the meditations and stay in it all day. And then I would reward myself by having a fun weekend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's how I was able to have those boundaries, but still be able to live both.
Yeah. So it was almost like, yes, you had the boundaries with the frat guys and the external environment, but the more important boundaries were actually you to you.
Yes. Yeah. Very big of comparing you to you.
Yeah.
Struggled with external comparison for many years. And I noticed a lot of results when it was just came down to beating you every day.
Yeah. There's no one else to compete with because everyone's having their own journeys. And one of the things I heard a quote which I loved. It was champions don't have something that other people don't have. They're actually missing something that most people have. Where it's
Yes,
like
I have heard that too.
it's like the drive and the competition comes from a lack of something inside them that most people just inherently have, so they don't have the desire to destroy themselves to win the championship or to make $1 billion or all of that stuff. And so I think that like that kind of goes back to the comparing you to you thing, because if your only quote unquote competition is within yourself, you're going to quickly realize there's not a whole lot of competition to have, and it's more about just like loving yourself and accepting yourself and that more so than, I need to be better than.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just more healthy. You're the best control group for you.
Yeah.
Um, why, I'm nervous before doing this, like I told you, but it was like, I'm comparing myself to how a Joe Rogan guest would behave. And it's like, they've done
Exactly.
how many podcasts? So coming on
Yeah.
here is a victory for me. This is like my first interview. So, um, that's the victory, not performing better than someone who already goes on mainstream podcasts. It's just
Right.
being better than you, and then you'll eventually get there. But I mean, like I said, you are the best control group for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no one else who's lived your experience before. One of my big frustrations with science is looking at studies. It's like they're not controlling for genetic variation. They're not controlling for all of these individual factors that are going to play a really important role in why one person does really well with a drug and another person does really poorly with a drug. And so it's like, oh, we have this study that shows X, X, and X, but it's like, it's just all of these other humans who have these other health conditions, who have
exactly.
these other genes.
It's the collective result. You know,
Right,
28% of people had this result, and however many percent had this result, but it's like everyone's their own person.
right.
So how are you going to tell me how I'm going to react based off of thousands of other people who are not not a single cell, not a single piece of DNA is the same.
Exactly. I think it just goes back to, at the end of the day, your experience as the individual matters, no matter what the news says, what social media says, what the government says, what science says, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, your experience is important. You're the only one
Yeah,
living it. And I think
yeah.
that's just kind of like a continuation of your point where, like, you are your control group.
Create your own reality.
Exactly. That
Don't let
is
anyone do it for you.
that is all that we practice.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of creating your own reality, you're just getting started with your career, or are going to be starting soon. Um, and I think one of the cool things about finance is, like, there's definitely a parallel to that sort of fraternity culture, um, where it may not necessarily go hand in hand with spirituality. Is your practice going to be something that you use to kind of regulate yourself in this world? Or ideally, is that something that you kind of want to take with you, and really implement into the type of work that you do?
Both.
All right.
Like I said, it definitely will help. It has already helped with decision making and setting boundaries and parameters, and helps with performance and getting stuff done too. So, I mean, you make it what it is. If you want it to help for, like me being an ethical business leader and not screwing people over, which won't happen, but this definitely you can't have both.
Yeah.
So it definitely it keeps you on track, but then it also elevates your performance for sure.
As we're wrapping up here, I'm always going to ask anything that you're working on, any projects for people to check out. If you want to plug your social media, now is the time.
Sure thing. My Instagram is Ethan_Aguilar_. Pretty soon I'll probably have one of these for my own. I'll have to return the favor for you. Um,
Awesome.
but just been focused on getting everything set up here, getting through the final couple weeks with all my friends' semesters, and it'll get going this summer for sure. So I'm really just on Instagram, no website or anything. That would be the best place to reach me if
All
anyone
right.
had any questions.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you again for coming on. It has been an absolute blast. The second guest.
Yes,
So,
I'm honored.
thank you. Yeah,
I'm
man.
honored. I'm excited to see how big you take this.
That's, we'll see what happens. I'm sure you'll be back on again. And so thank you again, Ethan. And for everyone else, I will see you next time on Creating Genius.